Okay, cool. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our workshop, Seeking and Succeeding in Undergraduate Research, Perspectives from Final Year Undergraduates. My name is Brandan. I'm a fourth-year chemical engineering student from UCLA, here on behalf of the AIChE Executive Student Committee, the Institute's only student-run committee. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Peter, Elizabeth, and Mitchell, and we'll go around, take turns introducing ourselves. I also asked my colleagues to introduce a bit of their research as well. So a bit of my research background. I have experience with two UCLA professors, Dr. Yunfeng Liu and Dr. Yuzhang Li, doing research in energy storage materials and some electrochemical modeling. I've also had a chance to take in some outside UCLA research. I did one summer in Professor Julia R. Greer's group, doing some electrochemical modeling there as well. And also in Dr. Wu Sui's group, or the battery materials group at Pacific Northwest National Labs, doing some molecular dynamics for battery electrolyte systems. Now I'm going to pass off to my colleague Peter, who's going to turn to introduce himself, and then I guess he can popcorn to the next student presenter.
Hello, everybody. My name is Peter, and I'm a fourth-year student studying chemical engineering at the California Institute of Technology. So I'm also the vice chair of the AIChE Executive Student Committee, and it's a very precious honor holding that role. And in terms of my research, I've done all my research with Professor Richard Flagan at my time at Caltech, doing aerosol-related work, modeling, and I had the chance to work at JPL, or the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, doing some innovative work comparing air quality sensors. So that was a miraculous time getting to learn from one of the best aerosol experts in the field. And I'll pass it on to Mitchell.
Great, thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. My name is Mitchell Rogers. I am also a fourth-year undergraduate student studying chemical engineering. I'm studying at the University of California, Los Angeles with Brandan and with Elizabeth. My past research, I started off really just wanting to get some interest in research and understanding what it was. So I was involved in ion exchange and catalysis work with Professor Dante Simonetti. This is figuring out carbon recapture technology. I then kind of figured out more of my interests. I did some work on small water reverse osmosis systems and continuing that work. I'm also having significant involvement at Caltech as well with Professor John Seinfeld, where I'm studying the influence of biomass burning or wildfires on air quality, and I'm continuing to be involved in that as well. I'll pass it off to Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone. I am Elizabeth, and I'm also a fourth-year chemical engineering major at UCLA. So my research started off in the material science department, working on solar cells research. So my work primarily focused on organic synthesis of organic molecules for electronic applications. So that is with Professor Yang at UCLA. And after that, I moved on to more energy storage research, working with Professor Yuzhang Li, also at UCLA, on some lithium metal and lithium ion battery work. I also spent a summer at Caltech doing work with Professor Julia Greer, also on polymer electrolytes for lithium batteries.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. And I just want to say Elizabeth has been a lab mate of mine for the past year or so. It's such a pleasure to work. Okay, great. So how this talk is going to go, first we're going to discuss how to get involved in undergraduate research, and then we'll talk about how to make the most of your undergraduate research. And finally, we're going to cap it off with reflections on our undergraduate research, takeaways, and overall life lessons we got from our experience. So I'll go through some questions here. I'll let my colleagues, Peter, Mitchell, and Elizabeth answer. Then maybe I'll chime in when I have stuff to add as well. And yeah, are there any questions from the audience before we begin? I don't think we have anyone, do we? No? Okay, great. So I guess the first question is, how did each of you get involved with your undergraduate research opportunities? How much reaching out to professors did you do? Did you interact with graduate students? Or did you attend any research recruiting fairs? I popcorned to Peter last time, so I'm going to popcorn to Mitchell this time.
Great, thanks, Brandon. For me, I was really interested in it as soon as I got to UCLA. However, I would advise that I think it's important to take a few quarters or at least a quarter to really adjust to campus and college life. And there's a lot of other things to get used to that are important that you do well in, like classes. By my, we're on the quarter system. So by winter quarter, I did want to get involved in research. Essentially, I just took kind of some time to look at the different, faculty in the chemical engineering department. However, you can get involved in any department, and still have a really valuable research experience. I found some work that seemed interesting to me on ion exchange and catalysis work. And essentially, I just kind of sent a cold email. Also, I think it really helped to go in person and visit the professor. If they have an open door, that can really help as well, just to kind of really put yourself out there and have a one-on-one conversation with them. I think it really helped to take some time to really understand what their research was. Try reading a publication or two. I know they can be really dense, but I think by understanding the material that they're talking about and being able to tailor your introduction and your, if you write anything to them, about your qualifications or just a brief introduction, I think having some background knowledge about what they do, even a little bit, can be really helpful. And again, it doesn't have to be much, but just a sentence or two to really show that you've taken some time to learn what they're interested in. Yeah, I'll pass off to Elizabeth on this one.
Okay, so I also started my research in freshman year, but it was interesting because I wasn't really actively looking for research. It came more naturally through my TA. So it was during office hours, over time, learn a little bit about the research that he's doing and became very interested. So I just emailed the professor talking about what I learned about his research, how I found it really interesting. So looking back, I didn't really know if I really want to do research. It was more so just trying it out. But I would say over time, it is really through like lab experience and interacting with other grad students and PIs that I found, yeah, research is really something that I want to do. But so for students that want to get involved in research, I would say, yeah, just go ahead and email the professors. Usually professors are open to take on new undergraduate students. And, if you want to learn a little bit about the research first, maybe it'll be helpful to reach out to some of the grad students and maybe schedule meetings, because I know professors can be a little occupied sometimes, and grad students might have a little more time to explain things to you, just so you have a better understanding of what's going on in the lab and decide whether you want to pursue research in that group in particular. Yeah, so that's my experience. And Peter, yeah.
Okay, so my process for getting my research was cold calling my professor, cold emailing. I read about his research and what he did, and I researched and I looked, and then I made up an email with some of the research interests that I had, and I sent that off, and I had a couple meetings with him to determine what projects that he would want me to do and that I wanted to do as well. And I thought that process was fairly straightforward, just putting yourself out there, advocating for yourself. And even as a freshman, professors are looking for some undergraduate researchers in general. And I didn't have as many transitions, but I did this for my freshman summary. So it was for the Caltech SURF program, and I didn't really do any research during the school year because Caltech is quite a difficult place to get adjusted to, and it took some time for me to get used to the work and just getting used to the people and my work lifestyle. So I think it's depends on the school, I would say a lot too, but I think Caltech's just a pretty extreme case of this, but it worked out in the end. And I think having research at Caltech was a pretty interesting experience, getting to learn from Professor Flagan and all the interesting things that he knows.
Great, thanks, Peter. And thank you, Elizabeth Mitchell, for your responses there. Yeah, I definitely want to have some echo what I guess everyone was saying. I had a similar experience when working with my UCLA advisors, emailing Dr. Liu, and then following up with some in-person interfacing or interaction during faculty advising hours. As Mitchell mentioned, I think that face-to-face interaction really gets your name out there and really helps carry your case along. Yeah, especially professors are very busy, so emails can get lost in their inbox. So make sure I think as with any professional opportunity, it's all about developing the connections, right? Research is just one of many professional opportunities to go down. And I think maintaining and starting that connection, in the right way is important to creating future opportunities for you down the line. We'll talk about something I think that wasn't quite emphasized was doing research, during the summer. That can often take place on campus or can be through a program. I know many of us on this call did SURF, Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowships at Caltech. That is a program you have to apply for, and there's a detailed application process on their website. Totally check it out. It's an amazing program. You have to work for one summer, 10 to 12 weeks with a Caltech professor. There's also SULI, and that's what I did. That's like the Summer Undergraduate Laboratory Internship, which is basically a summer internship through a national lab. Also recommend that. So undergraduate research, there are law opportunities. Don't be during the summers. Feel free to use that summer to explore opportunities off campus. REUs, research experience for undergraduates. Those are funded by the NSF. Lots of great opportunities there. So yeah, both off campus and on campus, there are plenty of ways to get involved. Great, yes. Another question I have related to getting involved in undergraduate research is, obviously we're in a time of remote, or at least hybrid learning, if not remote. What are some of the things that a lot of us here have got involved with research in in-person environment, but if you happen to know folks who got involved in a remote environment, what are some advice you have for that? How do you maintain, or how do you start really that connection with senior researchers and you wish to get involved with them? How would you proceed with that? I want to popcorn to, I think Elizabeth hasn't gone quite so far yet. So I'm going to ask her if she got involved or if she knew anyone who got involved remotely.
So personally, my research has been mostly in person, even during COVID, just because of the nature of my work and that I was able to actually drive to campus and do some experimental stuff on campus. However, I would say during COVID, when there are a lot of cases, I did not go on campus because the campus would be closed. So during those time, I was working on like paper studies, doing review, reading a lot of papers. But in terms of remote research, like doing remote work, I know people that did a lot of modeling. So really, I would say for almost every research topic, there is the experimental aspect. There's also the modeling simulation aspect. So some people kind of just like took that route and then did a lot of simulations. And that worked out. But I would say the difficult part in remote learning is easier to get distracted and really set aside time to do research can be a lot more difficult than when you're in person doing experiments, because once you're in lab, you're ready to do experiments. But at home simulation, it can get a little tricky. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure I have good advice on that in terms of how to stay motivated to do your remote research. Perhaps somebody else who's done it have some more idea, better advice on this.
Yeah, I can jump in on this. It worked out somewhat nicely where I was kind of wrapping up with a project with a publication when the pandemic hit, and I kind of took that as an opportunity to find work that was less experimental and was able to be conducted remotely using modeling or data analysis work or simulations. And ultimately, I think I guess there's a lot of different moving parts to this. It's how do we get opportunities remotely, and then also how do we do research remotely kind of efficiently as an undergraduate and have a valuable experience doing it remotely. And I'm sure we can talk about that later as far as the differences in the research experience remotely. But as far as just securing the opportunities, it was honestly more of the same. It was more of the cold emailing, the cold calling. I think it required even more persistence. Sometimes professors might have a secretary that can help them out, and by contacting them, who's someone who is more used to getting a lot of emails and balancing those and getting them to the right people, that was really helpful for me, at least for getting involved in the SURF program, because I did do that remotely and joined it remotely. I also got involved with the professor by going to their Zoom office hours for a class. Even if you're not necessarily in that class, it's just, it can be helpful to find an opportunity to hop on a Zoom link where this person is going to be. And I think, that was kind of a smart move to try and simulate some in-person interaction to get your name out there and advocate for yourself. Even if it's not possible to do it physically with COVID. So that's just as far as my practice for getting involved. And I'm sure we can talk about the remote experience a little later. But I'm not sure if Peter or Brandan, you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted, for COVID, it was pretty hectic time, and I just decided to continue my research in some aspect with Professor Flagan and try to do something with modeling. So I modeled indoor air quality in the face of COVID-19. It was a pretty interesting way to get to know the first, as the research was coming out, I was able to perceive it. But there's also the issue of there were quite a bit of garbage articles, if you will, that were out there, and people were just publishing for the sake of publishing, it's a very pandemic specific thing to have. But it was interesting going through. I did some literature searching for my research during the pandemic, and it was a pretty interesting experience getting to it. I think remote research allows you the opportunity to really read. I mean, if it's not your most favorite thing, then that's purely understandable, but it's a good way to gain knowledge in a certain aspect of things really quickly. And the professors that help you understand it, dissect it. And if you have any questions, it's very easy to just go, hey, I need help on this or that. And you can email them. And for me, I had a weekly meeting with Professor Flagan, and we would discuss any questions that I had and how to approach next steps of the project. And I used Python to model the concentration levels of the virus. And I also did a thesis during the pandemic, which was pretty interesting. I drove to Caltech once a week, and it was mask related research, seeing the effectiveness of mask. And I think for me, I preferred in-person research as most do. That's because I think I personally like the experimental aspects of doing research, being able to just have grad students and sometimes professors would be in the lab or not, but having some sort of form of I need help, or it's just fun to do experiments. I feel that's why I think research is so interesting, just being able to do some experiments, get to learn some things, and think it's really that distinguishes remote research from in-person research. I'll pass it off to Brandon.
Thanks, Peter. And Mitchell, I think we've kind of merged, securing the opportunity and talking about how to do the remote research. So feel free to, after my response, jump back in how you conduct the remote research. But in terms of securing remote research, yes, I think Mitchell has touched already on a lot of points. I would also recommend using different platforms as well. We are in, digital age. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool professionally. So I think that's also how I reached out to my second advisor, Dr. Zhang Li, initially, and he suggested an email conversation for that. So very powerful. I've had a chance to meet other researchers that way. And as far as conducting remote research, I mentioned I do quite a bit of electrochemical modeling. That only happened because it's pandemic. Without COVID-19, I think I'd still be doing experimental research. So prior to the pandemic, I was in the lab, assembling coin cells and all the electrochemical cycling when you're doing battery research. And then now it's a lot of COMSOL, which is transport modeling. So identifying these concentration gradients in these electrochemical systems, which is fun. Modeling is a great way, and it really improves. It's a great way to improve your theoretical framework, I feel. It really, strengthens your fundamentals of chemistry, at least especially for my research. And it's really cool. You get to take your research anywhere. So do it on the plane, do it on the train, do it from your desk. Yes, experiment. Unfortunately, you can't take your glove box everywhere. So it doesn't work that way. Right. And yes, and also I think for remote recruiting fairs, I don't have a lot of colleagues I know, go through this process of maybe attending a remote research info sessions. But for those I do, they can be very successful, even in the pandemic. I recommend anytime getting one-on-one interactions with a potential researcher you want to work with. I think that's always good. Mitchell, did you want to add anything about your person doing remote research?
Oh, yeah, like my experience, or
Yes.
Yeah. I think Elizabeth, I really like the points she brought up about how when you're in this remote environment, and this applies to all kinds of work, not just research, but it can be difficult to separate work from play and to kind of have a nice work-life balance, because you're like, well, I'm at home, I can do research whenever I want to. I can do it at 6 in the morning, I can do it at 12 at night. Like it's whenever I have time. And at times the flexibility is really nice, because you can your schedule has some flexibility. But at the same time, you have to be careful that you first of all get the work done, but also that you have still a balance as well. I think for me, I tried to kind of set up a schedule and stick to it a little bit, and kind of say, oh, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm going to do research, and otherwise, I'm not. And, did that always work? Not necessarily. I'll be honest. There were times where I was like, oh, I got to do some extra work today. But I think that's just research. And I think, having that schedule helped. Having meetings also helped a lot. I think it can be really easy to feel a little bit disconnected doing remote work from the PI, from graduate students. You're just sitting in your room doing literature review all day. And I think scheduling meetings as often as you can, as long as people are willing to do it, can be helpful. And it can be with different people, meeting people for one-on-one on the first time just to hear about their research in the group. But meeting with more and more people in the group, I think, really helped me feel like I was part of it and kind of stay on task and fill my schedule up as much as I can to, have my research be efficient. As far as research experience, I think Peter and Brandan also brought up a lot of great things about, this is a really great time to learn more about the material. And I can relate to that. I think I really got to do some more intensive reading during COVID because I didn't have to be doing experimental work all day, or I couldn't. I had this opportunity to ensure I was very well, acquainted with the material that I was studying through literature review. So that's all from me, really. Thanks.
Thanks, Mitchell. I know a great point that Mitchell brought up was scheduling meetings, with other research in the group. One aspect of undergraduate research is really your mentor. How your relationship with your mentor can often define your experience. I think one question I have for the group is, can you speak on how often you met with your mentor, what your relationship was with your mentor, how would they help, and how would they foster critical thinking as an undergraduate? I'm going to start with Elizabeth this time. Feel free to popcorn someone else after your response.
Sure. So in terms of relationship with mentor, it really depends on your mentor, I think. Also, of course, you reaching out as undergrad. So I had some very interesting experience with this. My first professor that I worked with, and I'm still working with right now, Professor Yang, he is a little older and he has been in academia for many, many years. So usually with a little older and more established professors, they're a little more occupied in terms of the things that they have to do. I wasn't able to really meet with him, not really until this year when we got a lot closer. But so Professor Yang, he is very occupied most of the times. He doesn't meet with undergrads. Doesn't really meet with master's students either. So occasionally with grad students, and most of the lab work is directed by the postdocs. So it's very difficult for undergrads to get a hold of him unless you're taking his class, of course. So that is completely normal. If you're having trouble meeting with your mentor because of how busy your mentor is, that's okay. However, I did get a lot of interactions with a grad student and my postdoc just because I work with them on a daily basis. So your relationship with your mentor is really important, especially when it comes to applying to grad school, asking for a letter of recommendations. So with older established professors, usually what they tend to do is they have your grad student or your postdoc mentor to co-sign a recommendation letter for you. So that is okay. So don't stress out if you are not able to meet with your faculty mentor on a very regular basis. However, my second experience with Professor Yujan Lee is a lot more different because Yujan Lee is a new assistant professor at UCLA. So he is much more involved in mentoring students directly. So we didn't have a postdoc in the group, and we're some of the new members in the group at that time. So he actually had weekly meetings with us, one-on-one meetings, talking about research. So I really enjoyed that, had a lot of more direct mentorship from Professor Yujan Lee. So yeah, so it really depends. It really depends on your PI, really depends on the style of the lab, how they run the lab. And that is also something to consider when you're choosing which research group you want to work with. So if you prefer more direct mentorship, you can try to look for newer faculty members or just professors that are more hands-on, more involved in student research. But if you prefer a little more free space, doing your own things, then older professors also work. So that's my experience. So I'll popcorn to Peter.
So I think Professor Flagan is quite the exception for this case, but his lab is quite small in comparison to other Caltech labs, I would say. So I got to have a fairly frequent interaction with him. So I would meet with him every week to discuss my progress and what I did, and then he would put his input and suggest new methods of approaching it. And we also had some postdocs in the group who would chime in the conversation. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way to get to know my mentor. And not really know, but that's kind of hard to do in a semi-professional space of research. But it's very insightful to get to see how they think, how they talk, and just their experiences. I feel like Professor Flagan has really mentored me in that sense, telling me career advice, life advice. It's really insightful in that sense. And I guess I really enjoyed working in such a tight-knit small lab type of environment. It just benefits everybody involved because you get more close interaction with the professor, postdocs, and then there isn't like, oh, like there is like the professor, then the grad students, and then there's you. It's like it's a very direct relationship instead of being indirectly told what to do. And I think I enjoyed that more in that sense. And I'll pass it off to Mitchell.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think I also had the exception for one of my lab groups, but I've had the whole range. I've had a group where it was somewhat more you talk to the grad student, and they go to the postdoc and they go to the PI, and there is some hierarchy, and you have you see less direct interaction. And I have had opportunities where one of the groups I am in with water treatment with Professor Cohen. It is very personal, and it is very, I have to prepare my own materials to show at group meetings, and have my own literature review, and really handle my own project and when I want to get my manuscript written and all of that. So I think there's a wide range of experiences there. And something to note is that you could totally just ask about this, before joining the lab. Something I kind of maybe wish I did. Because at the beginning I was kind of like, well, I'll do anywhere, I'll go anywhere, and that's okay. I think it is good just to get your foot in the door somewhere, but at the same time, it can also be helpful just to simply ask and say, what are your expectations for undergraduate researchers? How frequently do you meet with them, or in what capacity? Does the lab ever get together outside of research lab? And this is kind of questions that I've learned to ask when applying to graduate school, but they're also very valid questions just as an undergraduate student when you're finding valuable research opportunities for yourself. So, sure, you're going to ask questions about their research and their projects, but really what I would argue is almost more important is their mentorship style and their lab group style and how they want to interact with undergraduate students. And these are all things you can ask before joining the lab on day one. Yeah.
I think Peter, Elizabeth, and Mitchell hit it right on the head. Yeah, I don't have much to add after that. One small caveat, when I was doing research, Elizabeth and I work in the same lab, so very similar meeting style right there. But as far as working, outside of UCLA, I think during these summer internships doing research, often the mentor meetings would be at least once a week, if not twice, if not daily. I remember during my time at Pacific Northwest National Labs, it'd be a lot of Microsoft Teams chatting. Yes, back and forth every day about the simulations we run. And I think when I was working at Caltech, it'd be once or twice a week giving small presentations. And of course, there is the larger presentations near the end of these summer internships, right? So after your 10 to 12 weeks, you give a big talk to a larger group, 30 or 40 people, not only to, I guess, the research group in general, but also to the other participants in that program and those mentors. So that's another great way to communicate your science to the general audience. Hey, I see we're kind of running a bit low on time, so I'll proceed a bit ahead of the question agenda I have here. So I have a two-part question. One, how did your time with undergraduate research inform and help improve, your later career choices? And two, how did your experience with AIChE help with your time as an undergraduate researcher? I'm going to popcorn to Peter.
Okay, so for the first question, I think my undergraduate research really led me towards not doing a PhD. I think that's more of a time commitment issue, and also the fact that I don't think I could envision. I feel like I had more mixed reviews about going to grad school. It seems like graduate school, specifically a PhD, is like more, for me, at least what I've seen, it's more geared towards like advanced research positions in R&D or getting a professorship. And I don't think I needed that as a Caltech undergraduate student, just simply off. I think Caltech is really known for its research and the ability of its students. So I don't feel like I would need to go to a PhD. And in terms of that, I am currently applying for some master's programs as well as applying for some jobs. So I think research has definitely helped me in getting knowledge in air quality research, and I think that's really set me apart from everyone else in that aspect. And I I'm I also did a thesis during my time doing research, so it was a really impactful experience getting to know how to learn how to do scientific writing, making sure your paper is organized, doing figures, reading the literature, and it really helps you think and write at the same time. And I guess the second part of this question, my experience with AIChE helped me as an undergraduate researcher because I knew how to, I guess, I did ChemiCar during my time as a member of AIChE, and that really helped my experimental skills, testing of various battery reactions, clock reactions. And I think if you have a really hands-on experimental experience, then it'll help you doing research. Because I think at Caltech, a lot of us are just doing classes, and I think it's hard to spare the time to do some experimental hands-on things. Caltech's weird in that aspect because there's only like a single lab requirement for the whole entire chemi major. So I think having the experience of doing ChemiCar really helped, and it was really fun at the same time. So I definitely would encourage you to join ChemiCar since we're here. And I think it's a really fruitful experience helping you do research, getting more experimental skills. And I think I also presented my research at the AIChE conference 2 years ago, and that was a really fruitful experience, getting to make a poster presentation in a room of like 300 people. Say it's a really large conference room, and people would come by and ask you questions. And at one of these, there was a person who doubted my expertise in air quality research because it was the freshman year of my summer. I was like, do you not know what PM matter is? I was like, huh. He kind of struck me as like, you don't know anything. But I mean, it's just a part of learning, part of developing as a speaker and presenting scientific knowledge. I guess with that, I will pass it off to Mitchell.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so the first part, I guess, of this is, what I gained from it, reflecting on my experience. And I think a lot of it's gonna be the same as what Peter stated, so I'm not gonna just say it again. I share a lot of the sentiments. I did, however, find that, I really enjoyed the research experience, so long as I was really interested in the subject material, and I was able to find a research community with, paths that I could really see myself going into. So research really led me into studying air quality, and I really enjoyed it. And I, have decided to pursue higher education for studying air quality and air quality management, be it at policy level or at a national lab. Beyond just finding the subject that I really want to pursue post grad, there's plenty of valuable research skills to be gained. The poster presentations, making the posters, those take a lot of hours just for one piece of paper, but it's a lot of hours to format it and figure out what words to put on the page and how to communicate those ideas. Also, technical writing and how to write efficiently. And I think, these are skills that you might do in undergrad labs as well, undergrad lab classes. But I think research really helped me even more, and I was able to succeed in those classes. And, in high school English, you're, taught to, I think, write, a little bit more liberally with, all of your words, and use all these, lavish words with, all these long meanings and complex sentences. And I think, you kind of learn that in this technical world that you want to write clearly and concisely and in a manner that others can understand and follow. And I think research helped with that a lot. So those are two big takeaways for me. With AIChE, again, I guess to get involved in research, it really helped a lot. I would say I got to develop connections with faculty through AIChE. My PI for my first group was our student chapter advisor. So that's really helped me for getting involved in lab, but also as someone to write a letter of recommendation for someone who has both been the advisor of the student chapter I've worked in for 4 years, but also my PI for 2 years. Just that dual network. Our student chapter also held a lot of research networking nights. We held lab tours, we held lunches with professors, we held a large speed networking night, kind of like a speed dating night to meet different grad students and professors. And I think all those events through the chapter helped me to find research and helped a lot of my peers as well. And then lastly, once I carried out research, the poster presentations, these talks, and being able to communicate the work to others and field questions and see what else is happening in the field. So the chapter and the organization as a whole, we were just in Boston giving the poster talks. I think all of this has been really an invaluable experience to develop as a researcher. And I'll pass it to Elizabeth.
Thank you. So for me personally, coming into college, I really didn't think that I would do research. That's one thing I told myself, that I wanted to get a job right out of college. But I would say that my research experience really changed that, because I realized that going in, I thought that research or PhD, master's, it would just be like 2 or 5 more years of school, just like undergrad. But then over time, I realized that research is really not like that. It is a lot more focused on a specific topic, a specific subject, not as broad. So when you're learning it, when you're learning the material, it is a lot more, you have a lot more motivation, because you're driven by, your curiosity, you wanting to know more. So I really appreciated that aspect of learning, as opposed to just having knowledge or things thrown at you, telling you to memorize or like do these problems. So I like research in the sense that you have a lot of free space to explore, to answer questions, to explain phenomena. So that's why I decided to apply to grad school and go into research. And I would say, in terms of how AIChE helped me to grow as a researcher, it would really be the people. So AIChE helps you to get to know a lot of other researchers that are not just people in your field. So specifically in my lab, my first lab, I don't think there's any other undergraduate students in the lab. So I'm mostly interacting with other graduate students, my postdoc, but through AIChE, you get to meet a lot of other undergraduate students that are not necessarily doing the same kind of research that you're doing, but it's great to hear about their experience, hear from their perspective on how they enjoy research and how they interacted with their professors and what they're doing in their research career. So it is really great to have that aspect as well.
If I could jump in here real quick, that appears to be our time for today, for this session at least. It's been wonderful hearing from all of you, but it looks like we're going to have to hop off here in just a moment.
Okay, great. Yes, I'll close then. Thank you, Peter, Elizabeth, and Mitchell, for those comments. Right, I don't have much to add there. You guys hit the nail on the head for all those points. So thank you all for those who are watching the live stream, and hope you get a chance to enjoy the recording afterwards. Feel free to reach out at brandon.tang@gmail.com for any additional questions you have. I can be sure to send that off to all the participants here, and I hope you have a great conference. Again, thank you for watching. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.